what can be put into the Constitution can slip away from you very quickly. And the greatest example going on right now before our very eyes is Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, which they're just disappearing with a magic wand, as if it doesn't exist, even though it could not be clearer what it's stating. And so, they want to kick it to Congress. So it's going to be up to us on January 6, 2025, to tell the rampaging Trump mobs that he's disqualified. And then we need bodyguards for everybody in Civil War conditions, all because the 9 justices, not all of them, but these justices who have not many cases to look at every year, not that much work to do, a huge staff, great protection, simply do not want to do their job and interpret what the great 14th Amendment means. And I'm glad that Sherilyn's creating her new center so we can bring that.
January 20th will truly be Liberation Day in America. Is that okay? Liberation Day.
President-elect Donald Trump is counting down the days until he takes back the White House. Over the weekend, he pledged to enact a sweeping agenda starting at the southern border.
We will begin the largest deportation operation in American history.
He also pledged to stop the woke. He told the crowd he'll make it official U.S. policy to have just 2 genders.
Get transgender out of the military and out of our elementary schools and middle schools.
And vowed to dismantle diversity, equity, and inclusion policies in the public and private sector.
In America, we believe in the merit system.
Democrats, meanwhile, are also gearing up for Trump's return.
I think we're in for some really rough sailing.
On CNN's State of the Union, Delaware Democratic Senator Chris Coons said Trump could face obstacles even from within his own party.
It's going to be difficult for them to pass much of President-elect Trump's ambitious agenda on straight party line votes. Well, Democrats will have to be in the mix.
Tell us what is first on the agenda as the 119th Congress prepares for the Trump administration.
Sure. First order of business is to elect Mike Johnson as Speaker again. And, I think that's going to happen, hopefully without any real issues. And then we've got a lot of work to do, Tony, and we're going to get started right away. We swear in the new members. We've got an exciting new freshman class, over 30 members that got elected this cycle from both, members from safe Republican districts, a few that switched Democrat seats to Republican seats. And then we got to get to work starting to move the Trump agenda. I know Donald Trump doesn't get sworn in until January 20th, but we're going to be getting to work starting January 3rd and beyond, getting our committees up and running, moving a budget so that we can have budget reconciliation and start the process of securing the border, of lowering inflation, fixing the mess that Joe Biden left behind. So that's going to be our first order of business, and it's going to keep us busy for the first few months.
Hey, welcome back to C-SPAN. Ooh. Welcome back to Inside Four Walls. I'm your host, James Madison, and The Hill has been a garbage outlet for a very long fucking time. It wasn't even that long ago. I believe it was during the Trump 1 episode. I was shitting on The Hill. Look, Crystal Ball is a fucking retard. That bitch is dumb, bro. Doesn't know what the fuck she's talking about, prone to emotional outbursts, and sometime around like 2019, that bitch lost it. And then Cigar Jetty, that guy fucking is equally garbage. He's literally the definition of controlled opposition. That guy is the right-wing equivalent of Anderson Cooper. This guy fucking sucks. And look, I understand that such strong political voices like Milquetoast, fucking Joe Rogan, says, "Oh, I love The Hill's Rising." The Hill's Rising is garbage. Their polls are fucking garbage. And here's the thing: you go back to the earliest episodes of Inside Four Walls, The Hill was my go-to source for everything. Like, I used to really like The Hill, but this episode is a keen reason as to why I've repeatedly called The Hill garbage. Incorrect propagandist bullshit. And really what it is, right? The Hill abused their credit score, to put it in another way. The Hill had this really great credit score, so they went out and they took all this expensive shit out on credit. Not thinking about it, not worrying about it, thinking it would never catch up to them, and then bam, it hits them. Full speed. Hard as fuck. That's what happened to The Hill. Everything caught up to them. And now they're kind of... Look, you can call me crazy for this. This article will be a good illustration of what I mean. They are a progressive leftist rag trying to sound like the Lotus Eaters. It's another way of describing it. The Hill sucks. Let's get into it. And I'm gonna pull up some of my own articles and references. But let's get into it, right? The Hill column claims Congress should stop Trump from becoming president. Whoa, guys. I thought you were the party of democracy, right? He won the popular vote. Trump won the election. I thought, but The Hill has all these articles they wrote. There's a lot of articles about it, but just type it in the first few. Breaking Project Democracy news. And then right here, governors launch coalition to help protect democracy. There's a lot of articles on their website all about protecting our democracy. And look, I know it's a tired trope, and many people get tired of hearing it, but no, we are a constitutional republic with democratic processes. You can gloss over it, and here's why it gets glossed over, right? Because, you're like my age or older, you knew this. It wasn't until like 20 minutes ago that everyone forgot we were actually a republic. And then for everybody else, it's a younger side getting into politics for the first time who is new to hearing a lot of these terminologies. You never really cared about politics. You're like 18 now, look using my audience, using you guys as an example of my analytics here. You have people who are roughly between the ages of like 15 to 21 who don't know a whole lot about politics other than like social media stuff, to the point where even they may not be familiar with like terms like POTUS, or who takes over if the line of succession from the president is taken out. Like, what's the order of succession? And then, like, President pro tempore, who's that? You got all these different, like, how does electoral college work? So, to a lot of older people are like, yeah, I did, blah, 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 I know, constitutional republic. It's old hat to them because they knew it and they're tired of having to talk about it and repeat it. I get that. But there's a lot of newer people coming into politics who haven't heard that, and I'm incredibly sympathetic towards them. And I think we should, on the older side of politics, we should probably take some time to address these people. Not as ignorant people, not as people who don't know anything about politics, but like a kid learn how to ride a bike. Bring them on, show them what the terms are, and teach them. Because you gotta keep in mind, older demographic, because my crowd is split, right? I'm in the middle. Like, a chunk of my crowd is either young, like 15 to 21, or like 40 to 60. Shout out to the grandpas listening to this show. Grandpas and grandmas, appreciate y'all. Y'all put up some foul language for me. But it's probably, compared to the PC bullshit you've had to deal with, I'm probably somewhat of a glass of water. But yeah, you get this whole crowd that was raised in this political correct, hyper woke era who's coming out of it. They weren't taught civics, they weren't taught home ec, they don't know any of this stuff. And the ones who do know it had to go out of their way to learn it. Right, so it's worth repeating that we are a constitutional republic, not a democracy. And anyone who tries to convince you this is a democracy, it is probably best if you look at them genuinely as throw the phrase "our democracy" into the same camp as standing in solidarity. These flowery sounding, like their words have meanings, right? But flowery sounding, fucking frou-frou, meaningless communist soft speak. Stand in solidarity. Don't you have empathy? It's all this emotional play. You'll notice when they say our democracy, it's coming from this emotional standpoint. It's not our democracy is made up of this. It's not, because we don't live in a democracy. Start somebody who says, we live in a republic. We live in a republic of democratically elected individuals who are elected to run that republic. A republic is a nation ran by smaller states. Like states have power over federal government. It's a republic, not a democracy. A democracy is a very top-down, borderline socialist hierarchy that never works. So you have elements of it worked into the republic system. Basically, what brought Rome to its knees. Try to avoid that. There's a lot more that goes into it. This is the real, skeletal structure. And look, right now, it's worth looking at the comments if you fit the demographic I'm trying to talk to. Go look at the comments of this video. There's probably a lot of people arguing with me about how I'm wrong, how I don't know what I'm talking about, or whatever. Look into them. But now that I've ran it for no fucking reason, let's get into it. And by the way, take those comments seriously, because again, I'm in the news world, right? I'm in the podcasting world. Sure, I have press credentials, but I've openly said those mean fuck all. Anyone can lie to you to push an agenda. I could lie to you to push my narrative. I could do whatever that command pound thing on my keyboard is to bring up the script to change the article in front of you. I don't know how to do it, but I could. There's a number of reasons why I could want to lie to you, could want to change up how I cover things. I'm capable of pushing an agenda, and no one is immune from propaganda. So always fact check us, right? If we're wrong, people like me, leave a comment, call us out. And if you're snarky about it, I'm be snarky right back. But if you're like, hey, I think you're wrong about this, I'm going to ask you for a source. That's all. Let's get into this. The Hill column claims, all right, it's the inescapable conclusion of this evidence is that Trump engaged in an insurrection against the Constitution. See these pictures here? Right. By David Creighton, December 26, 2024. Writing in The Hill, Evan Davis and David Shuttle, absolute cocks. They're the people who sit in that chair in the corner of the hotel room when they get, one bed for 3 people. You get the idea. Sub-Destiny argued that Congress could and should block President-elect Donald Trump from taking office. The pair began with the false contention that Section 3 of the 14th Amendment of the Constitution somehow applies to Trump. No person shall hold any office, civil or military, under the United States or under any state who having previously taken an oath to support the Constitution of the United States shall have engaged in an insurrection or rebellion against the same, or given aid or comfort to an enemy thereof. Shout to Mark Milley violating the Logan Act and the Mann Act by telling China that if America does anything, we will react to it. True story, Mark Milley did that multiple times. Anything Joe Biden or Trump did, he was snitching to different world leaders about it. Fact check me, Mark Milley's a little bitch. Mark Milley should be stripped of all of his fucking medals. He has never seen a battlefield once in his entire fucking life. He was a pencil pusher who somehow climbed the ranks. Facts. Fuck Mark Milley. Me and my homies hate Mark Milley. We wish him well and pray God accept him, but fuck Mark Milley. Let's see, where am I? But they all love Mark Milley. Like, they're never gonna go at him for it. Let's see, where was I? In the office of the military, but they're up. Trump was never convicted for insurrection. In fact, he wasn't even tried. One critic said the two are legal half-wits without a case to stand upon. So we point and we laugh. Aha, 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 aha. The Constitution, and not the government. I got ahead of myself. The authors argue that, quote, the disqualification is based on insurrection against the Constitution and not the government. AKA, womp womp, we have no case. We're butthurt, give some Luberol for our fucking chafed liberal asses, boys. And that evidence of Trump doing so is overwhelming. Far-left BLM activist Jake Sullivan, convicted on all charges in January 6 case. January 6 narratives are broken. This right here is in the description below. This guy was a far-left agitator pretending to be a member of the press. And not like, he didn't have credentials. I don't care about credentials. Whatever your intentions are. His intentions were to stoke chaos. Perhaps I'm wrong. Maybe I'm saying something wrong. I'll completely own that if I'm wrong. But from everything I've read and everything I reported in this episode, it's been a long time. Right? I just don't want to allege anything. Right? But he was paid out by multiple news outlets. And then we're going to just look. I have covered so much when it comes to January 6th and Trump's so-called insurrection. This isn't even all of the fucking takes I've uploaded about it. Now, Nancy. We're fucked, Chuck. Now, we also have this right here, right? This is an article that came up in multiple times in every episode I uploaded. That we basically consulted this article. FBI confirms there was no insurrection on January 6th. Trump didn't plan it. This is one of the most debunked things in fucking history. But they're still gonna run with it anyway and completely overlook the firebombing of the White House. Was it May 14th? When violent leftists beat cops, set fire to St. John's Church, well, a chunk of it, and the outskirts of it. You know, all this crazy shit. But a riot were the only people who died, right? And that's what it was, a riot. A riot where the only people who died were Trump supporters. Largely unarmed. There were people, look at my intro for the show. Not this intro, but like the compilations that go up at 12. Yeah, people had guns there. And we don't know who they were. You know, so there's a lot we don't know about January 6th. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you there were nobody with guns, but somehow, even with the few people who were armed on the right who went there, nothing happened. Nobody in DC got harmed. The only people no DC politicians or staff or whatever got harmed. The only people who died were Trump supporters, the so-called insurrectionists, right? That's very interesting to me. Yet the FBI itself says there's scant to no evidence that it was actually insurrection. That's kind of wild. Right, people sit here and they'll really push this insurrection line, and then when the whole insurrection thing completely fell apart, when Christopher and some of the people were basically forced to testify, and like, yeah, you know, there may have been people on the ground, they all suddenly switched. The entire media complex switched to saying that Donald Trump committed insurrection against the Constitution. Again, look, and like I said when this all was first happening, honey, bring your boyfriend and come look. We got Trump for the 480th millionth time. It's really what it felt like. Oh, Trump's getting indicted. Oh, Trump's getting his home raided. In all these cases, I kept saying, bring it on. You're not going to find anything. Sure. Do this. Raise hell. Throw a bitch fit about it. Right? Highlight to the American people who are starting to realize how much bullshit the left spew. You know, no heart emoji type bullshit. Right? Or as my black cousin say, type shit. I go to cookouts. Don't be mad because you don't get to go. I'm only mad because there's no actual food with cookouts, but all jokes aside here, you know, you get this push, and it works on certain people, right? And I've talked about this before in different episodes. I've seen people who believe the January 6th narratives in the beginning. Over the course of time, maybe they've heard an update, like, you know, maybe they heard about January 6th, then a year later they heard about a bunch of arrests, and then maybe late 2023 they heard that there were people locked up in solitary confinement who were there since the day of January 6th, 2021, and they've been in solitary confinement with no court date. I know a lot of people who spend time in prison and jails, and when they heard that shit, it sent a chill down their spines. Look, I know a lot of people, I've referenced this before, I precinct delegate in my area on one side of the compass, and the other side of it, I grew up around bikers in a tattoo shop. I've met all walks of life, and I've maintained contact with a lot of these people, and I've uploaded to people who haven't seen it yet. Maybe this is one of your first videos of me watching. I've done countless. This year and last year were kind of light on it. Last year I got run over by a forklift, so I was indisposed for a bit, but this year I did a couple. But I do a lot of like on the ground interviews, go to left rallies, right rallies, political things, non-political things, whatever. And the January 6th thing was one of those things that people quickly quit caring about, and the people who still cared about it predominantly were hyper informed on it, or informed enough to know that there was something seriously wrong with it. And I don't think, let's say there's like 50 people I interviewed who said there's something seriously wrong with it, right? Compared to that group of maybe like one or two people I met on the left who were like, they deserved to all be there. And even then, they had really shaky understanding and justifications for why they felt the way they did. It was just fear porn that they had been consuming. But I've watched so many people who on like the day of were like, it's horrible, it's the worst thing to ever happen to our country, oh my god. All of a sudden, years later, be like, I don't care, eggs are expensive, man. You know, that's a real quick change in people's opinions about this. And then, you know, in hindsight, we've gotten time to reflect at 2020. Summer of Love, the riots, George Floyd riots, all this crazy shit. And a lot of people have walked away from that whole 2020 is one of those things that a lot of people feel like it didn't happen, and when they think back about it, it's just bad. So yeah, I will say what's kind of funny about 2020 is when Trump got into office in 2016. I remember everybody saying that 2016 were 2019 and 2020, or 2015 and 2016 were the worst years of our lives. That was the common consensus at that point in time. But it was really like the best years of this timeline were 2015 through like 2016. And just like the years going in, everyone was calling it bad, right? But with Trump going into office, it was like, oh, these are the worst years ever. But Trump leaving office was actually the worst years ever. 2020 to 2021. Right, the transition period from Trump to Joe was just dark. There was this weird depression over the country. It was weird, so weird to talk about, and so weird to even recall, but people have moved on so far past that. Like, it feels like it was an entirely different life. You know, so you hit people at January 6th, they just say, so fucking what, dude? And I say this as somebody who's, like, I've been to, like fundraisers for January 6th prisoners and all this type of shit. And I hate to say, even those fundraisers have gotten smaller. People on the right don't care that much about it anymore, and people on the left, other than like a handful of like real lefty left types, don't really care about it either. You know? And as for like the progressive left, they got mad. The only reason they were mad about it is because they didn't do it. You know, the progressive left was mad about January 6th because they were the ones who wanted to do it. They had talked about it. They had camped outside the gates to the Capitol, but they never actually did anything. And of course, I'm not inciting anything to do it. I'm just kind of like trying to paint a picture of how it was in like around the time of it initially happening versus now. But it doesn't really matter because all of it switched over to saying Trump committed some insurrection against the Constitution, this nebulous idea they don't really back up. They also argue the disqualification based on, authors argue that the disqualification is based on insurrection against the Constitution and not the government. Evidence is overwhelming and has been demonstrated, quote, 3 separate forms. Rep. Jamie Raskin, completely insane lunatic, has already threatened to engage in this sort of distraction when Congress meets to certify the Electoral College votes. Which means fuck all, by the way. It doesn't mean anything. Jamie Raskin, Eric Swalwell, all these usual people can throw their tizzy fits and get bang bang with Fang Fang, and it doesn't fucking matter. Cry about it, liberal. Cry about it. Let's see. The only reason I'm not being as loud as I normally would be is just people sleeping. Again, I'm saying with a family member, older family member, she was in an accident, got some busted up bones, so... You know, they're sleeping, so I'm going to try and keep it down a little bit. Oh, and that's, it's been a long time since I gave an update. There's not really an update on it. I just want to say thank you for the handful of people who left, like, praying for them in the comment sections on, like, Rumble and whatnot. Appreciate you. They've been received, and everything's going just fine. It's just like a grandmother in the family. Older lady. Unfortunate, but she's doing fine. Pain in my ass, though. Love ya. Pain in my ass, though. Congress meets to certify the Electoral College votes. God, they're going to hear this episode and be like, I don't mean to be. I'm just trying to crack a joke. Moving on. None of y'all really care about this. A threat he nearly meets to certify the electoral votes. A threat he made, I think you meant to say a threat he made nearly a year ago, but you say a threat he nearly a year ago. Davis and Shuttle say 3 contested proceedings prove their case. They begin with Trump's second impeachment that was based on the president being responsible for the incitement of insurrection. This very charge encompasses engaging in insurrection against the Constitution or giving aid and comfort to the enemies thereof, the grounds for disqualification specified in Section 3. But it doesn't. It's one of those things, like, they tried this, it didn't. They've already ran this fucking play, though, and it failed. It fell flat on its fucking face. The writers say the second contested proceeding was the finding by a Colorado court of clear and convincing evidence that Trump engaged in insurrection as those terms are used in Section 3. And then they got laughed at. And that ruling beginning affirmed by Colorado. There's a lot of types in your article, my boy. Colorado Supreme Court. The authors argue that even if the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that states do not have the authority to bar candidates from running for federal office. Repeat that. The U.S. Supreme Court ruled that states do not have the authority. Do not have the authority. You cannot choose who is on the ballot if they meet. If they get the quotas, the support they need. You can choose how the elections are ran, but you can't handpick your candidates. I mean, when it comes to voting Super Tuesday and all that, I shouldn't have to get into the minutiae and clarifying the obvious. But, you get the idea. If not, Google. Get a pocket constitution for free from any number of constitution pocket websites. Have fun. The authors argue that even if the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that the states do not have the authority to bar candidates from running for federal office, this did not mean Trump had not engaged in insurrection. The Supreme Court struck down states' bans of Trump's name on ballots. So it seemed like they did bad. But not only that, they said prove it in a court of law. And if you can't, then you can't. They didn't say you couldn't. They just said you can't. If you can't prove it, you can't prove it, and it isn't until proven guilty. What a wild concept in this country. The third contested proceeding raised by Davis and Shuttle is what they refer to as the bipartisan inquiry of the House Select Committee to investigate the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol, which has been dismissed by Republicans as a Democrat-led kangaroo court that ignored the evidence and allegedly concealed witnesses to lie. Counseled. It's not even alleged. That's Liz Cheney. Liz Cheney pressured a witness. Yeah, I don't need to say allegedly on this. This fucking bloviated whore did do this, folks. New text reveal Liz Cheney, and this right here, this is right here, Committee on House Administrations, Chairman Brian Steele. This is an official government website. I'm not bullshitting ya. This is a real legit .gov, ch.house.gov. You can look that up in the description below, folks. Right here. Revealed communicated with Cassidy Hutchinson about her select committee testimony without Hutchinson's attorney's knowledge, despite Cheney knowing it was unethical. No, we 100% got her peer pressuring people. It's not like the freakers, you can read it. It's not even up for debate. And when Trump said that she should be investigated and called out for it, she wigged the fuck out. Had a massive meltdown all over social media and cried. She's a Cheney. Can you imagine you live in a timeline where the left rush to defend a fucking Cheney? And by the way, remember, Kamala Harris bragged about having Dick Cheney's support. What has the left become? For nearly a month. Now, I'm going to do a deep dive on this. I'm going to do its own episode, so I will leave a link to this in the description below. You can read through it yourself. Again, I fully encourage you to do so. If I was worried about lying to you or getting caught, I wouldn't leave you a fucking link, but I'm going to, as I always do. Let's see. Nevertheless, the authors argue that the inescapable conclusion of the evidence is that Trump engaged in insurrection against the Constitution. They also point to Trump asking then Vice President Mike Pence to reject the Electoral College votes for Joe Biden, and that Trump then used Pence's refusal to do so to increase the anger of the crowd, the January 6th crowd. How? They were already there. Trump was given a speech. None of this makes sense. Right, here's the thing. Trump was given a speech. Trump was still talking at the same time the first people breached the Capitol. Right, mind you, the first people who breached the Capitol were in black bloc. And then after they got there, they pulled hats out their backpacks. We have the footage for it. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Sure, I'm completely open to being wrong about that, but everything I've seen to read and suggest, and I've covered in my past episodes, which again, description below. And not only that, right? These episodes, they have the article I read and the sources for them. Well, this one apparently not. helicopter. So I'll own that one. Don't know why that one doesn't happen. But here, right? QAnon shaman, grounds building house wing, statutory hall. Right, everything here, all these episodes have the articles tied to them. Well, that has nothing to do with this episode. All the stuff tied to them, and I'll leave this article in the description below as well. So again, all of this is made up liberal bullshit in the funniest fucking way. And if you're mad about me saying that, well, pretty simply put, cry liberal. Let's see. Like kangaroo, but evidence, witness, and blood. Let's see, J6 crowd. Which makes no fucking sense. And then how could Trump communicate with them? Because by the time Trump got done speaking, he had already been banned on all these social media platforms and silenced. I don't know. It's a really weird timeline these people have cooked up in their fucking heads. But, you know what, whatever. Go look at the timeline of events. I'm absolutely telling you the truth. The author suggested that Democrats can use the Electoral Count Act to block Trump from assuming the presidency. The authors suggest, by the way. Mind you. Okay, so, look. I just had it up here for a second. I'm gonna remind myself of why I brought it up in the first place. Troll it back to Trump assuming a simply electoral vote. Oh yeah, with Pence. Right. So, right here. In the 1960s, right? Not only, look, I'm sure where I'm at right now, right? This right here is the govinfo.gov. This is an actual Wednesday, December 13th, 2009. Why do I have this pulled up? This talks about an incident that happened in 1961 where it was Nixon and Kennedy, and Hawaii sent alternate voters, right? A whole sled of alternate electors to DC, demanding recounts of a vote for an election they did not trust. Basically 1-for-1 with 2020. They thought the election was stolen, they didn't trust it, they didn't like it, and Nixon and the whole of DC was like, fine, we'll hear it. And they sent alternative electors to DC to have those votes chosen. Do we choose the votes of these alternate electors that chooses the election to go one way, or do we stick with the ballots as they are and go this way, just like it was in 2020? And Nixon, the vice president at the time, was the one who made the choice to reject the electors. And then we got Nixon, or then we got Kennedy. And they tried to make this argument as a way to, how do I want to word this? Basically, they never bring up this particular story in history because it's inconvenient and not a lot of people know much about it. I myself don't know a whole lot about the situation, but Mike Pence was in basically the same situation from everything I've come to understand about this. I'll leave a link to the description below. You can read through it. There's a Wikipedia page on this and everything. I'm not helping you out, bud. But there's a whole elector since state of Hawaii voted more Republican than the national average. What a different time to be alive. No. Like, there's a lot to read here, and this is already over a half hour long. You know, like, how long do you guys want to be here? But again, pause it here, read through this. It's pretty straightforward, right? And tell me this doesn't sound like how people were talking in 2020. Party of Hawaii and Honolulu Circuit Court, Dodge did not allege any voter fraud, instead merely observing that the tabulation sheets were not consistent with various presidents. State Republican Party official considered supporting the recount petition, but were initially divided and eventually declined to join it. One elector on the Republican slate, O.P. Soros, opposed the recount petition. All three electors on the Republican slate were named as defendants, along with the Republican Lieutenant Governor James Cuomo. who at the time was serving as the acting governor of the state and would be required to sign any certificate ascertainment. Attorney General Shiro Kawasawa, however you pronounce that, also joined the suit to represent the state's interest. Despite the tabulation errors, acting Governor Kola certified Nixon's 141 vote victory on November 28th. This is a whole thing here where it goes into fraud, not fraud, ballots that appeared in the middle of the night. The way this shit lines up suspiciously well with 2020 is abundant, and there's a lot to go off. Right, and in 2020 language we said alternative voters or alternate electors was the terminology we used. Back in their day, they used the term unofficial Democratic slate of electors. Right, so the recount was thus still ongoing on December. Again, read this whole thing to yourself. Right, December 19th, the day specified in the U.S. law for casting of votes. Right here. As a consequence, both officially certified Republican slate of electors, Gavin A. Bush, the head of a shitty-ass legacy, J. Howard Warwell, and O.P. Soares, and the unofficial Democratic slate of electors, Jenny K. Wilson, William H. Heen, and Delbert E. Metzger, convened in the Lowen Palace and casted competing electoral votes for Nixon and Kennedy just 1 minute apart. Certificates for both slates of electoral votes were sent to Franklin G. Florte, an administrator of General Service. Right, now we hop down here. Right here, January 6, 1961, Nixon, who presided over the session in his capacity as President of the Senate, as Vice President and President of the Senate, just like Pence was. Just like Pence, Nixon was looking at alternate electors, just like Pence was. And just like Pence, now here's the thing. They say, well, Nixon didn't intend to set a precedent. The fact that he's had to illustrate the fact that he didn't intend to implies the very fact that a precedent was set that day. I'm sorry that so many pseudo-intellectual scholars want to talk about it differently, but it's simply the case. When it's done one way, it's going to create a precedent where it's done that way again and again and again until somebody breaks it. Nixon was the first to do it. This kind of thing doesn't happen very often. It happened again. There's a lot of contested elections, but 1960s and 2000 and 2020, these elections were weird. Hyper weird. Presented both Republican and Democratic electors, and mind you, these were the unofficial, as they called them, certificates to head off the possibility of a floor objection by Democrats such as Representative Daniel Inuo? I don't know how to pronounce that. Nixon then requested to receive anonymous consent from the joint session for the Democratic certificate to be counted, and the Republican certificate to be set aside. Meaning Nixon, the vice president at the time, and the president of the Senate, just like Pence was, chose. He chose who won that. Pence had the president and the history behind him to do it. Sure, there's a lot of arguments from people who say that would have worked and wouldn't have worked. I'm saying explain to me clearly why it wouldn't have. And honestly, I'm kind of happy Pence chose the way he did, because if things didn't get this bad, Trump probably wouldn't have gotten the supermajority like he got this time around. Ooh. Like I said a long time ago, the two nice things about the Biden years is, one, they seem to be in a hurry to get over, and two, they're so bad it's going to bring on the red wave, and maybe we'll get another era of uninterrupted common sense. But we'll continue on. As an aside, though, he specified that this was done without intent of establishing a precedent. Yeah, well, it did. So that's just a little extra context, now that I've fucking chewed you here for damn near 40 minutes. Tell you, the authors of this article from The Hill are retarded. Let's see. Evidence: Trump engaged in insurrection against the Constitution. I already read that. It also suggests that Democrats can use Electoral Act to block Trump from assuming the presidency by simply not counting Electoral College votes for Trump based off the fact that he is disqualified by the Constitution, even though he's not. And a bunch of nobodies working for a formerly prestigious outlet like The Hill can't do fuck all about it. Sorry, sweethearts, you're not as important as your little holographic press badge would allow you to think. And here, I got mine right here. Keep them clipped to my hip at all times. Doesn't make me no more special than you. Fuck, I read the same sources you do. Unless I'm there on the ground, you know. All these badges really do is give me a little extra clearance on the ground so I can get up closer to things and get better pictures of shit. That's all I can really use it for, so. I think people like this gives you any special whatever over anything else. We're so fucking stupid. Block Trump from assuming the presidency and disqualify the Constitution. They say it would only require 20% of the membership of both House and Senate, which you will never get, by the way, to initiate this process. However, the author's missive is quickly becoming the object of scorn and derision on social media, with former Department of Justice Assistant Attorney General Jeff Clark saying, quote, "The reasoning of this article is also poor because the second impeachment failed. The Colorado case failed. And the J6 Select Committee was an illegal farce that had the power to adjudicate nothing, and they destroyed, by the way, this isn't part of the article, but they destroyed countless documents." You're going to see a lot of bad, ugly shit happening politically to the people involved in the J6 Select Committee. You're going to see them investigated, you're going to see them arrested, you're going to see the same people who brought the hell onto innocent people in America brought to the same punishment that they brought out, right? People like Liz Cheney, all these people are going to be investigated, and they're going to fall apart underneath the scrutiny. They're already squirming now, and nothing's happened. Moving on. Clark savaged the authors of the article as two former law clerks of Potter Stewart. If Justice Stewart were still alive, he would be well advised to consider announcing he regretted ever having credentialized these legal halfwits. Oof, based. It's funny to see the never Trump legal establishment, or rather former establishment, still howling into the void. Yeah, let's check out this whole tweet right here, shall we? This will be a little bit of a longer episode. Let's see. Check the progress. You can see some behind the scenes shit real quick. 49%. Okay, that's not too bad. We're doing all right. From Jeff Clark, the reasoning of this article is so poor. First, second impeachment failed. 2, the Colorado case failed, and its purported adjudication of the facts of insurrection were never made sense because of the trial judge held that the 14th Amendment, Section 3, doesn't apply to the president, and so that court should never have reached any functional resolution, any factual resolution. 3, trash. And the January 6th Select Committee was an illegal farce that had the power to adjudicate nothing. 2 former clerks of Potter Stewart are authors. Yep, I already read that, I guess. I was really thinking there'd be something different here, but oh well. Back to the article at hand. Steve Young. Perhaps it is pronounced Chung, but I thought it was pronounced Young. Also commented on yet another attempt by Trump haters to turn back the clock. Oh look, Democrats want to steal the election and invalidate the will of the American people. Threat to democracy. Yeah, right? Isn't that how it goes? Wins the popular vote, immediately doesn't care about it. Look, it's just like how the left says, oh, we support interracial marriages and we love the blacks, but as soon as Clarence Thomas rules in a way they don't, look at the way they talked about him. Look at that crazy shit, man. All these BLM Beckys using the hard R to describe a black man. I guess some black lives don't matter to these people. What can I say? Now me, I like Clarence Thomas. I think he's base as fuck. And that brings us to the end of this episode of Inside Four Walls. the left is really losing their shit. You've had congresswomen and men saying, we're not going to certify. You've had celebrities leave. You've had all kinds of like really, really crazy shit happen over the course of this election cycle and post-election. And I love it. And the content's only going to get crazier from here. Like, people are like, well, in the election, there was now what? Now we laugh. You make memes of them until they cry, and then you make memes of them crying. Sung Soo, probably. That being said, this has been Inside Four Walls. I have, of course, been your pugnacious, pronounced host, James the Mad Dog Madison, and I will incite your insurrection later. Hubba, 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 hubba.